Welcome to Inspired Living with Carrie Murphy, the podcast, where as your host each and every week, I am going to inspire you and empower you to share your message and step into that big vision you see for yourself. I'll be bringing you celebrity interviews, influencer insights, and my personal tips from decades as an on-camera talent, TV host, media expert, and entrepreneur, so you can build a brilliant seven-figure brand. Because when you're inspired, you inspire others. So let's go. As someone who didn't get remarried until her mid-40s and found the love of my life through a dating app, I know how you feel when you say, I'm done with it. It's too hard. There's no good guys left. There's no good women left. Dating apps suck. And on this episode today, I am bringing you someone that might just change your thinking on that. My dear friend, April Beyer, who is the founder and CEO of Level Connection. She's also a renowned relationship expert. And on this episode, she shares with you really, what does it take to find love? What are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself? And is it timing? Or is it you? And when it comes to building a business, so many things that we attribute to finding love also come into building our businesses. And she talks about really being a pioneer in the dating space, creating technology that has never been out there before, what it was like to step out and take that uncomfortable risk, and how important it is to believe in you and your vision. So if you are ready to level up love and life, get ready, my friend, for a very inspired living episode with my dear friend, April Beyer. April Beyer, I am so happy to have you back on the show. I don't know if you know this, but our last inspired living episode that we did together, which you've come a long way since then with what you've built in your company, it is one of the most watched episodes of Inspired Living TV. Did you know?
I had no idea.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
You know what? I think there's something about love.
Yeah. Carrie, it's interesting because I was just at your beautiful wedding.
Yeah.
And I always say to my husband, whenever we go to a wedding, a party, a funeral, please get me a drink, please get me food, because everybody's going to want to talk to me about love, dating, and matchmaking. So it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And it was so great to have you there. Oh my gosh, what a special time. I know you and I have been friends for quite some time now, and you have been with me along this whole journey. And so it was so beautiful to have you and Todd there. And you know what, April, it's just really amazing what you have built in, the last few years. And I'm really excited to have you back on the show to talk about that. But before we do, I think that the culture around dating has changed so much since we've had this whole global pandemic thing happening. And I'm so curious for that person, because I know you and I both know this person who is still looking for love and finding that partner. And you have, an amazing technology now that you can bring to the marketplace. But how has it changed? How do you feel it's changed?
Well, it's definitely changed in this last year. Right as COVID hit, we went into panic, and as did our clients. So we had women everywhere calling in, men saying, pause my account, potential clients not doing their contracts. I mean, we went into an absolute tailspin as a business. And I've been at this for 2 decades. I was there in 2009 when everything crashed, when all of our clients were real estate developers. And when they lost their businesses, so did we. But I kept building and I kept working at it. And so I'm no stranger to, something on a huge scale is going to impact the business. And for the first 2 weeks, Carrie, of COVID, I got to admit, I went like dark. I was in a fetal position. I was crying. I was worried about life, the world, my family, my business. And then I went for a walk and I just said, please, give me some guidance here. Yeah. And I learned a few things on those early morning walks. And one was just start serving. And through the serving, I started pivoting. And what came to me and why I started coaching a lot more during this last year alongside of running Level was because everybody in the single community did not know suddenly how to connect, how to relate in this age. And it was more than just dating on Zoom. It was something else. It was this Now I'm reevaluating myself. I'm reevaluating what I value and who I value and how I want to, right? Like we were all sitting on our couches at the top of COVID going, what next? And,
Yes.
and who is next? And I got really amped, Carrie. I got so excited about the love community because I saw this as a massive opportunity for people to go back to a more traditional way of getting to know one another. The inability to go out and meet created a different avenue for people to start talking on the phone more, learning each other through tone, through sound, through voice, writing emails to one another, getting on Zoom dates. And even though that's newer technology, you couldn't get to the person. So a lot of their crutches, if you will, like going to that fancy restaurant and going to that loud, cool bar where a lot
or
gets
just
lost.
sending text messages.
Or just sending text messages.
Yeah.
People were longing for connection. So if they couldn't be in person, they were putting more heart and soul and intention into their communication. So I got really jazzed, and we've come back since my coaching business exploded. But I'm not going to lie, people were definitely freaking out during this time, and they still are, because what it created was a little bit of trepidation and nerves. People either fell in love this last year. We had a lot of relationships. I'm about to go to my second client wedding during this weekend. It's wedding season, but we also saw breakups, right? We saw divorces and we saw breakups. So it's been the great equalizer. And I'm so glad I called my company Level, because it's like, it really leveled the playing field in so many ways.
So let's talk about Level. I mean, when I look back, April, at how I met Michael, I was so against, online dating, and yet I felt I had no choice. As a single mom at the time, growing Inspired Living, I was like, how am I going to meet anyone? And so there I was on an app swiping right. And one of the things that I feel has been really vital to sustainability right now in this climate is innovation. And you had started Level way beyond this pandemic, but it's such a different approach to the online dating that most people know. Can you explain to us what Level is, where you came, to this idea, and more importantly, how you've brought it to life?
Oh, thank you. Level was really born from seeing the demise in emotion, right? And it was trying to solve a problem in the market. So we saw the dating apps come through, right? When I started 20 years ago, it was Match and eHarmony. Then along came the Bumbles and the Tinders and the Hinge. And I saw such a decline in the morale, right, of people. So when there was a decline in morale, my coaching business went up. Matchmaking started to become more antiquated. It's so specialized and so special that it's not for everyone. So it excludes a lot of people. So most of the people that are single are on those dating apps. But as the dating apps improve, the love life of singles does not improve. So I saw this huge gap in the market of, okay, there are dating apps and then there are matchmaking companies, and there wasn't anything in between. Matchmaking company, although exclusive, it excludes just for the price point alone, or could be demographic. And then there were dating apps that are all DIY. And unless you have a lot of time to give, it could be 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a month of swiping. So I was just trying to think, how do I blend those worlds? How do I create something that can move beyond me, so that if I'm not sitting there doing the interviewing myself, the vetting, the matching, the feedback, the follow through, the accountability programs that we insert into what we do, what if I weren't there? And so I just went out to go, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to create an algorithm. And then it was the AI, and then it was the flow and the process that we built. And it really just took what makes a matchmaking company old school and made it really modern and really sleek. So selfishly, it was, let me solve my problems within a company. And then also at the same time, how can I solve the customer's problems? How can I get them to trust, have accountability, know where they stand, never be ghosted? All those things that come with dating apps, we have been able to eradicate.
To alleviate 40
alleviate.
to 50 hours of swiping people, and the
Yeah.
ghosting. I mean, all the things. And you're right. People get so disheartened and they're like, forget it. I'm just going to be single. Like there's no one out there. And yet for people who don't know April, you've spent the last 2 decades in that exclusive matchmaking field. Like you were one of the top matchmakers in the country. Like this is what you did. And you were at a place which I just think is so important as an entrepreneur for the business owner that's listening or watching right now, is that you have to figure out, how do I scale what I do? How do I take my zone of genius, what I'm really good at, and be able to help more people? You figure that out. It is a win-win, right? Because you have more time, or at least you will someday, April. I promise it's coming.
Let's be real. Let's
be real.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation, but you're also able to serve a lot more people. And that's what Level has done. You've somewhat leveled the playing ground for people and for yourself. But I know you're like, I just thought I'd come up with an algorithm. Sure. Sounds easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was approached by someone in the outside world about licensing or partnering on a dating app. And I looked at it and it just felt like everything else, the same exact problems that create the emotional disturbances in people and why they have to go to dating coaches and why they say things like, I hate dating. And so suddenly dating became synonymous with dating apps. They're two completely different things, right? A dating app is like a broken bike. You'll get to your destination eventually, maybe, but you're going to have to pump the tires a lot. So when I looked at this dating app, Carrie, it was just ineffective and inefficient. And I went and I called a client of mine who is in private equity and a dear friend. And I just said, can I bend your ear? And that's sort of been my biggest strength, I think, as an entrepreneur, is being able to say, I need advice. Can you help me? And I gave it to my client and I shared with him for about 45 minutes what this app was going to do. And he looked at me and he said, April, you're the one with the IP. You're the one with the 2 decades. Go do this yourself. And he shouldn't have said that, because that night I went home and I literally went back from the office and I papered my home office wall, Carrie, with white paper. And I took out pens and I started like a beautiful mind. I was doing calculations, variations, mathematics. A and E go here. D and C are a 50%. This is 63%. I started weighing things. I took my laptop home and I basically did an assessment of the top 10 values people ask for, the top 10 deal breakers, the things that create a hiccup in a date. I basically had like a war between these attributes, because after a while in the old school matchmaking, if you're looking at profiles and you're doing old school interviews, there's only so many people you can serve.
Right.
And everybody was relying on me. So they loved meeting me. That was really fun. I get an hour and a half with April Beyer, but then an hour and a half of my day means I'm not out there meeting another 150 people or 350 or 1,000 or 2,000 people in that same hour. So I just started building it brick by brick. And we went to a dev shop in Los Angeles and presented them with it. And we started working with them. And it was a hefty price tag. And we started looking at investors at that time for a seed round. And everything was going okay. I had interested investors. Most of them knew me. They were prior clients of mine that believed in love and they believed in what I was doing. And then everything got into, well, we need this money for these lawyers and we need this money for that lawyers. And I was already like knee deep in development with my engineers. And so I looked at my husband and I said, who's our CFO, and I said, can I do this without investors? Can I build out my MVP? And he said, yes, you can. So I put all of my own, I don't know if I'm crazy or smart. I put all of my own money into it and started working side by side with the developers to create all of that ML and AI and all of the process inside of this. Best thing I've ever done, scariest thing, hands down.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of,
sleep,
gray hair.
Yeah. You look amazing, sister. I mean, good Lord. But you know what, April, I think that this is just such a great example of entrepreneurship is about risk and it's about passion and it's about following, your gut. And you had all these people say, great idea, but to have someone say to you, April, why don't you do this? It's like sometimes we look outside for the solution when it's like, oh my gosh, it's almost like too close. Like, okay, it's right there. So you start white papering it out and doing it all. So for people who are used to the swipe left and right, tell us how Level is different. What can we expect when we work with Level?
Level is still because it's been my business model my entire career, where we've always worked for men and we've opened our doors and our network to women everywhere. And the reason why I've done that thus far is because I don't want women on a hunt for love. I want women empowered to attract it and receive it. So we still have women onboarding. They can do their own interview from the privacy of their home. We get to watch those interviews, take our notes. All of the questions that I present in that sort of process are questions I would ask if I were sitting with you. And so we're on the other side and we're watching this.
Wow.
The men have to interview with us. But what it is that they actually are still coming into a matchmaking environment. It's just things like feedback, how we find those matches has changed. These people aren't actually sourcing their own ideas. They're not even sitting in an app. We're just notifying them when there's something to go into their app to look at. Because the design was, how do I get people out into the real world on real dates, get them out of the swipe?
Mm-hmm.
But that means not gamifying. And that means that we actually didn't create, as of yet, a native app. Because in order to have a native app, you have to gamify it. You have to have a reason to have people inside of that all day, every day. And that's what I didn't want. So this is more of like a notification center where they can, if a woman gets a date through us, she's going to get a text message. It's going to take her right to her account, and then she can look at it, and then she can say, yes, set me up. No, thank you. I'm going to pass. So it's just we're leveraging technology to standardize a traditional matchmaking process is what we've really done.
Which is brilliant, because you still get that hands-on, there's someone behind the scenes working on the match. But I'm still curious, April, like, how does this alleviate you working harder? So you have technology that supports the communication and, the accessibility and all those things that you don't have to do one-on-one anymore. But how does that really leverage your time? And what do you see next for Level? Because you're right, to do a native app, you would have to gamify it, and then you're kind of in the same place as everyone else.
Exactly. Well, it's completely shifted how I do my time. I don't do those personal interviews anymore unless it's a VIP client that I sit down with.
I remember though, when you would do all those interviews,
yeah,
and that must have taken obviously a lot of time.
Right. Well, for example, in the old days, if I met 3 to 5 women in a day, if you imagine, there's a lot of scheduling that's involved in that, getting no-showed, women sitting in my office wanting to stay longer. And then when they leave,
you do fall in love with April Beyer, by the way. It's impossible not to. You don't want to leave her office.
Yeah. Everybody would come into my office, Carrie, and they'd be like, so I'll have another coffee. I'm like, no, you got to get out the door.
And time's up.
And done. So I would sit and I would actually create bios for people. I would write their story. So the interview itself was an hour and a half. Then I would write their story, which took 30 to 45 minutes. Then sending everybody emails with, here's your date. Would you like to go out on that date? Yes. Getting on the phone. All of those things are
very manual,
are no longer needed. It's still done, but it's baked into the IP. So I created all of the, whatever I would say to you after sending you a date, whatever you would say to me post date and how I would answer you, that's already designed. And yes, we're behind it, but instead of us doing, 5 hours of work, we're doing maybe 45 minutes of work. And the nice thing is I never set out to have the technology take over the business, because this is love, right? This is dating. It can't possibly predict chemistry. Nobody can. Not the greatest matchmaker, not the greatest machine learning can.
It's like it can't predict the stock market.
It cannot.
Same thing. Yeah.
What my model does predict is values, right? It can predict that you two, based on both of your dynamic questionnaires, and our questionnaire more or less feels and has been likened to like the Myers-Briggs for the heart. It really sources for your truth. It's not a fill in the blank kind of questionnaire. So we can guarantee that when people are going out, their values are aligned. They're going to actually really like each other. And the feedback, which has been really cool, kind of basically mirrors and reflects what we already knew going in. So
Mhm.
it has absolutely leveraged and shifted my time for sure. And it makes my clients' time easier. They're not pouring through their emails or spending time swiping. They're doing a completely different sort of setup with their dating life. So my system has completely changed. And what it's afforded me to do is more clients, meeting more people, more women for our clients, and also moving level to even our next step. So we're not done innovating, because I think I'm one of those entrepreneurs.
I don't think you will ever be done innovating, April. Let's be clear. Let's be
I'm,
clear here.
I'm always thinking like, what's next? Like,
Yeah.
because I realized that what I do here, and something that really came up for me during COVID, was so many people lost their jobs. And
Yes.
because so many women, especially a lot of women, were hit very, very hard in this time, that I love mentorship and I love teaching. So where I'm moving now is more of a mentorship model to be able to support women all over the country to start their own businesses. And it's using a lot of what we're doing already, and then creating a network, because matchmaking is very, very fragmented. It's not unified.
Mhm.
Matchmakers might call one another, but it's more like one off. And my opinion is, wait a minute, if we're going to survive in this world and we're going to like link arm in arm with other women, let's do it together. Right? Instead of
Amen,
trying to think
sister.
of that's my business and that's my
Yes.
business, let's do it together. If we don't do it now, we're going to miss out on a major, major opportunity for women to grow. And I think we're being called. I know you feel it too. We
So
are
much
being
so.
called to step up in our world, in our life, in our business, in our relationships. We are becoming leaders on many, many levels. And that's where I'm heading now.
Yeah, and I love that so much, April. And what a beautiful place for you to really evolve into is that mentorship. I mean, you're a friend, you're a mentor to me. I can talk to you for hours. And yet, what you're doing is so empowering for other women out there. So before we go into the business side of things, which I love to take the conversation there, for someone who's interested in learning more about Level, can you maybe direct them where to go? Is it open across the country? Is it specific to a certain region? So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how would I go about signing up for Level?
Yeah, as a woman, you would just go to levelconnections.com and apply. And then we review those, make sure, that everybody is real, because we want to keep the consistency and the caliber of our network
Mhm.
and the accuracy of our network. And then once you apply and it's completely complimentary, then you're sent through our dynamic profile and interview process. And what's interesting about it is, even if you don't, there's no guarantees for dates for women because it's a male driven model. But the nice thing is, if you do hear from us with an introduction, it means you too are aligned. It is absolutely 50-50 for both of you. And there's a good enough reason for both of you to be connected.
Yeah.
But even with that, I developed the questionnaire to be a learning tool. So when you come out of this, you actually are asked questions that you may not have ever asked of yourself. You learn, right? So everything about our platform is education. So to me, it's like, it doesn't matter where you are, because we are expanding nationwide in the next year. We want everybody from everywhere to be in that network, and then just let it ride.
Let it go.
Let it go. And that's how you should be as a woman anyway, right? You shouldn't have sort of that grip on an outcome. You should say, hey, I'm going to throw my hat over the fence and start that business, or invest in myself, or get that coach, or I'm going to put myself into that Level Connections network. And who knows? There's a gal that's about to be, I know, on the side, there's a gal that's about to be engaged through us, who was in my network, I think, Carrie, for 2.5 years. And I called her.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's like, as long as you're single, you stay with us and you just kind of free fall and you let yourself go, knowing that your profile is safe and secure, and that no one is browsing you. No one can shop you. We are actually still selecting the introductions. And for men, it's just a matter of coming in and putting in an inquiry and getting on the phone and talking with us about our membership tiers.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
amazing. I'm so proud of you for building out such an incredible platform. And you're so amazing at what you do. And to be able to serve and help more people, it must feel really good. But let's go back to risk.
What's
let's
that?
go let's go back to, here you are. over 2 decades, really doing everything one-to-one with excellence. You've been on Dr. Phil, you've been on all these amazing programs. You're now co-hosting a show with Anna Faris, which is just amazing. Like, you've really built an incredible business and notoriety, around what you do. And then you had this idea to build out Level and the platform and the technology. And now you have a bigger vision, to grow it. What were some of the, I want to say, maybe like hurdles that you had to overcome? Because when you're starting a business, and you're going into mentorship here, April, right? So when you're starting out, we have these beautiful big ideas, and then roadblocks come up, or fear comes up, or the I don't know how. Like, you had never built out technology before, right? So can you just go through a little bit some of the things that you had to maybe go through and overcome to get where you are now, for that woman who's like, oh my gosh, I have this idea, but I don't have any idea like how to actually make it come to life. But I know
Yeah.
it's there,
Yes. Yes. So much of it starts, people talk about business coaches, and I think so much of it starts with, how you were raised.
Mhm.
I was raised by parents that said, I know I can quit my job because I had one once. I know I can quit that relationship because I had one once. Like, you
Yeah.
really have to believe that there's another train at the station. So it's not just loving and believing in your idea and your vision of your business. It's also believing in yourself, no matter what people say. So when I started this idea of evolving my business, I was lucky enough to have been in the industry for long enough that I had people that were listening to me. But even still, there were early investor meetings where I was brutalized in those meetings. I was told I wasn't ready. I was told that I didn't have the right team. I was told a lot of different things. And so, kind of mustering up that confidence to be able to step back and say, no, no, no. There was a whole year, Carrie, that because of our dev shop, with something they did, they essentially held us hostage for an entire year. My system didn't work.
And this is your development, right?
This is my development team.
I know it's dev. I just want to make sure everyone
Yeah,
knows it's
sorry,
dev.
sorry.
Right.
I'm
The
being
tech
so
lingo,
techie,
just making sure. Yeah.
And it didn't work for a really long time. And so when you are writing on your own financing, that is like,
Super
it can be
stressful.
really, really stressful.
Yeah.
And I remember being in those meetings and being the only woman at the table and saying, I don't like the learning tool. I don't like the algorithm. This is what I need. And then having them say, this is what we built, take it. And being, I feel like I'm a pretty strong, powerful person. And I was still being treated badly in the boardroom.
Mm.
And even a lot of people will say, well, if I had a husband, my life would be different. I would take that risk on that business. I would start that company. It's not true. Sometimes your partner can be very, very helpful to your business, as mine has as well. But sometimes they can have their own scarcity, right?
Sure. A
So they,
1000%.
right?
Yeah.
If they're risk averse, they can actually get in your way. And I remember being in board meetings and my husband would be there and I would tap his knee and he wouldn't see what I saw because he's not a girl.
Yeah.
And I finally had to put my foot down and say, you won't speak to me like that. This is my company. This is my vision. I am funding and I'm writing this hefty check every single month. And then I thought, isn't that terrible that as women, we have to kind of step on somebody like that in order to get the job done and get respect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think I did it in a masculine way. I think I did it in a very feminine, powerful way. And a lot of women think, well, I have to be masculine if I'm going to take that kind of a risk. I also, I was going through two really, really bad. I was recovering from two very painful surgeries when I was building Level, to the point where I don't know if you remember this, but driving to my tech meetings to downtown LA and just like I was in tears. I was in so much physical pain. And the money is going out the door and the physical body wasn't the way it was. I mean, I can't believe I even survived it. It was really, really challenging. So what I did was I supported myself as I was taking the risk. I supported myself with people who believed in me. That meant family members, friends. I asked my husband for the faith. And I did not spend time with any naysayers. So if you
Okay,
are,
wait. Listen up. This is important. Yeah, I feel like we need a flashing red sign here. Yes.
Well, right? Because everybody, there's people around you that love you and want to protect you, and they think they're being supportive, but they're coming from their lens of
Right.
protection. And so it can be very, very confusing if you're starting out to think, well, my mother said, or my father is a company man, and he
Yeah.
said, no, unless you're working for corporate America, you don't have value. You'll never leave a job unless you already have another one lined up. Right. So even those well-meaning people, friends and family
Yeah.
members could hurt you and crush your
Your dream.
chances. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was told, if you don't have a CTO, we can't invest in you. I was told no so many times. I was told it wasn't going to work, mostly by men, and even, some female investors that I was having conversations with. It's not like they were any more supportive. So when the push comes to shove, Carrie, I kept thinking that somebody else was going to have my answer, or somebody else was going to have the investment, or somebody else was going to build out that learning tool. I thought I was going to tell my technology team, go build this. Little did I know that they said, no, we can build the technology, but you have to give the brain to the technology. So that's something I learned when I was going through all of this, is that every time I gave away my power, or I brought in somebody who I thought, well, they're going to do it for me.
Right. They have all the answers.
They have all the answers. We crashed and burned. And what happens is every single time it came back to, you got to do it yourself, April. You got to do it yourself. And that's where that like growth, that sticky, really uncomfortable growth happens.
Yeah.
I had a potential partner for the business at some point. I was so excited. He had already had a huge acquisition several years ago. And we took a meeting, 2 or 3 meetings. Everything was looking great, Carrie. And I was like, this is it. This is going to get my baby on the road, on the freeway. And he said something to us in the meeting that was so disrespectful. And everything in my body went, this is not good. This is not right.
Yeah.
And I ended the meeting that day, and I sent him on his way, and I fell to the ground, and I just kind of cried for a good hour. And my husband said, why are you crying? And I said, because that's over. That person's never coming back into our office again. He's not right for me. He's not right for this. Now, what are we going to do? So every time I hit those roadblocks where I thought somebody, especially some man, was going to come in and save the day, and I was devastated, I learned there was more in the tank, right? There was more in the bank. I made more money to pay for it. Like I built the plane as I was flying it, and it was always me. And I'm not saying I didn't have a team, and we've had amazing support. My husband's been great at project management. It's all been fantastic. But if you don't have it within yourself to keep going and realize that sometimes all the answers are just within you, you won't build the great team. You won't hire the right people. So it was a risk to my mental well-being. It was a risk to my finances. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, Carrie, but do you know how I paid for my first development, that first year and a half?
I have some thoughts, but I don't want to share them unless you tell me I'm okay to share them.
I don't even know
Was
if I've
it
ever.
The settlement?
It was my settlement money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
something else.
Not only was I playing with my own money, but there was such a loss of revenue when I was hurt that, I was called for ABC 2020 in New York, and I was so excited. And then I couldn't go because I couldn't sit on a plane to go to New York for 6 hours. I was in too much pain. So there was a massive loss. I had lost the opportunity to have a baby because of my injuries. And there I was now playing with that money. It wasn't like it was found money.
Right.
Whenever you get a settlement,
you paid a lot for that money.
I paid dearly. So every time something, exactly. So every time something broke, every time the technology broke, every time we couldn't get it to market, every time we spent money on marketing that didn't work, every single thing had a deep, deep biting pain with it. And we still came out the other side.
Hey, April, just listening to what you were saying, there's a couple things that I just want to bring back up. And the first one is, you're talking about like the physical pain you were in due to your injury, and then just the pain of building out this new business model and what you had to go through for that. Did it also teach you, and I'm assuming it did, that you are capable of handling so much more than you think you are? Because I think as women, we kind of put a ceiling on what we are capable of doing,
Mm.
where I mean we all say, hey, women are super women, and sometimes that can be a compliment, and sometimes I'm like, don't call me superwoman, like I'm so not superwoman, like I hurt, I bleed, I cry, like I have my moments. But did you have that just like resilience, like, wow, I'm even stronger than I thought I was?
1,000%. And you are superwoman. And by the way, Carrie, I always say that to you when I leave, a meeting with you or lunch with you. I always go, oh, yeah, you're such a superwoman. I don't think anybody thinks that superwoman doesn't cry or bleed or
Mm,
fall down, right? She's superwoman because she's trying to do it all and she's
yeah.
doing it really, really well, despite all the odds. And so, yeah, you're right. I think that's the thing that's so gratifying about entrepreneurship. It's I did it anyway.
I did it, and I just got chills all over. I did it anyway.
I did it anyway. And you realize that that kind of growth also influences partnership.
Yeah.
It's not saying that you have to have a successful business to meet an amazing partner, but you have to know your edges in order to meet your partner. You have to know what you are mentally, physically, spiritually capable of to meet your partner.
I love that. You got to know your edges.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. You also mentioned how every time you brought in a man, but it could have been anyone, to be like the knight in shining armor, you ended up going back to yourself. I just want to say there have been many conversations I've had with other friends that have built very successful companies. And one of the things that I've heard more times that I can count is, I brought in someone to run my company and I should have trusted myself.
Yep.
I hired that CEO, or I hired the COO or the president or someone to come in and run things because I didn't think I was capable. And then it was the most costly mistake I made, because then I had to try to come back in and fix things or make it mine again or whatever. And I'm not saying that when it's right to hire that person at all, that's not what I'm saying. But I think if we do it, if we don't trust ourselves, that's what it comes down to. We don't
Yep.
feel like we know enough, we're good enough, we can handle it. Many of us are technicians who then are running a company, and we're like, oh my God, I'm now a CEO managing teams and people and finances and all the things. And we doubt it, so we give it away. And then we realize, like, we gave away our baby and now we want the baby back. Like, give it back. And I'm so proud of you, April, for like keeping the baby and saying, you know what, like, this is mine. And even though, you can respect people's opinions, it didn't change your vision of, it might have changed the how, and you've gotten some, feedback on that, but you still stayed true to who you are and what you want to create. And I think that is a really beautiful thing. And something, again, I think a lot of people,
Mhm.
they look back when they do that too soon and
Yeah.
go, yikes. Yeah.
Well, I think you hit on something so important, Carrie, which is it's not the action of hiring that CEO or that person to run things or to have them come in with financing or the partner. It's about the scarcity. It's about the fear.
Yep.
Because you talk a lot about, building your team and don't wait to hire the people that can support you to really elevate
Don't
you.
wait.
You talk about that a lot,
Yeah.
but you're doing it because you're ready for that next stage, as opposed to,
Right.
I can't do it, so I'm going to bring in this person. Anytime we make any decision from fear and scarcity in life, in love, in business, it always ends up belly flopping. We can almost like go, yep, that's exactly when it was. That was that fear moment. That's why I hired
Yeah.
that person. So when we're making choices for partnership in personal or business, it has to be like, am I making this choice out of abundance and collaboration? And does this person match my core values? Because we're going to have different skills, right? But they
Right.
have to match our core values. Okay, check, check, check. Or am I doing it because I don't think I can step up? There was a
Mm.
client of mine that actually is married through me. He's always singing my praises. Very brilliant guy. I respect him so much. And I remember when I pitched him this idea early on, he said, no, you're not going to be CEO, right? And I said, well, yeah, I will be CEO of the company. No, 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 you're going to have to hire, a CEO who's used to running a company like that. Well, it's a few years later, I'm still CEO. Now, if we build out what we're going to build out, that might shift and change, but not because I don't think I can do it, but because I'm being
Right.
called somewhere else to support the company in a different way.
And that's such a big difference. And I want to make sure that everyone is hearing that this isn't coming from a place of, oh my God, I can't do it, so I'm going to go hire someone. And yet I want to say too, April, that there's nothing wrong with hiring people that are more efficient or know something or proficient or have a different skill set. I don't want to hire people that can do what I do. I want to hire people that can do things better than I can. So I think it just comes down to, is this a person that's going to grow my business, or is it coming from a place of, like you said, scarcity and I can't do this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I met a woman recently that, I mean, we're trying to work something out, but she is power and she's better than me at a lot of things. She's genius, but we share the same values. She has the entrepreneurial soul. So I know that I could bring her into the company and things would be close to the vision, right, of where I'm going. So I think it's just it's like, it's shading, Carrie, right?
Yeah.
Is this person like, are they smarter than me in this area? Damn straight. Yes. Like we want to work with people that are better than us at things.
Please.
It's like, don't play tennis with somebody who doesn't play as well as you do. Play with somebody who's better than
Yeah.
you,
Your
right?
game will get better.
But
Yes.
don't play tennis with somebody who's going to, wipe you off the court and then tear you down for it
Right.
and
Oh,
change
that's a good
partners, right?
analogy. Yeah.
So it really goes back to values. And I absolutely agree that we have to collaborate. And there are some people, I think, though, that get in their own way. So when it's like there's a lot of founders that we hear about that will hold on to the baby and then they lose because they won't bring in that person.
1,000% right. They
So
and they
there's
need that. So it
and
really is like, the timing of everything. And that goes down to your intuition and knowing when it's the right time to do that. And I think that's kind of where we are with this conversation. And I keep hearing these certain things like, values. And it's interesting, April, because I think that, and you teach this so well, that when it comes to love, when it comes to business, like at the end of the day, it's all about alignment with values. And I will tell you, when I was in a
Mm,
mastermind with other 7 and 8 figure women, we weren't talking about opt-ins and lead gen and all those things. We were talking about culture and core values of our companies. And I
mhm.
think that it's just such a great way to kind of like move into this next phase of this call, is that whether it's love or it is business, it all comes down to understanding your core values.
Every time, every
Yeah.
time. I mean, my business is built on alignment of core values, right? It's a values-based system. I'm a values-based matchmaker. I make my choices based on my values. And I think if you use that as your North Star, you really can't go wrong.
Mhm.
And along the way, that doesn't mean that there aren't any bumps in the road. Like it's like a relationship, right? It's gonna ebb
There
and
are plenty.
oh, there are
Yes.
plenty.
Yes.
We talk about this,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong place just because there is a lot of growing pains. And a
Yeah.
lot of people quit too soon. They quit
Or
a
they
date too
give up.
soon. They quit
They
a
give up.
business too soon. They quit a
Yeah.
relationship too soon because it's like it's suddenly hard. And what they're not realizing is this is where you are growing. This is where you are learning about yourself. Don't be so quick to give up because it is always darkest before the dawn. And I am
So true.
living proof of it,
We both are. I think we both are.
Yeah.
And how do you help people elicit core values? Or do you have any recommendations? I know that there's someone listening right now that's like, this all sounds great, but I don't know my values. What do you recommend for that?
I have one, it's not all, but I have one quick thing that everybody can do. A lot of people like to talk about their values, right? And when they talk about them, they do very generic big ones like love, um, compassion, but I can't sink my teeth into it. And if I'm like trying to actually create alignment of a match, I can't, there's no data for love. Like, but what does love mean to you? So I have a quick, fun tool that I use that I created, which is when you are not working, where do you spend when you have extra time, energy, and resources? Where do you spend that? When you're not working or working at the company or whatever you're doing. And if, for those of us that are entrepreneurs, it could also involve what are we spending on in our business?
Mhm.
That is a direct reflection of your core values. Because, like it or not, where attention goes, that's where your values are. So, where is that? And that's a really good thing. If you really sit down and think about where are you going? Because a lot of people can say, well, when I have more money, I will. Or when I find a lover or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife, I will.
Mm.
Or if I
Mhm.
wasn't working so hard, I'd go see my parents. You know that because we talk a lot, I am crazy busy in my business. There was even hiccups before our meeting today. And yet I am going to make time always for my family, for my parents. It's
Yes.
so important to me. You do it, right?
Yep.
You're
Yep.
always going to see your family. They're always coming to see you. That is so evident in your life. So that's how you do it. Like, because you can't make excuses because whatever you are spending your time, energy, and resources on is exactly what you value. I don't care how much you protest, that is where it is. And it can shift,
Yep.
right? It can shift, but pretty much those are kind of centralized foundational values and a really good way to assess it.
So good. So, all right, think about, where do you spend your time? What are you doing? And how is that lining up to meet your goals and your Mr. or Mrs. Right and all of those things? You know, April, we've talked in the past about lists and all the things. And I want to say, like, there are so many friends I know that are just at that place where they have given up and they're just like, there's no good guys out there. There's no good women left. It's all gone. And this is just too hard. And, I always say, go to level.
Yeah, go to level.
Go to level.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes it does feel challenging. I think it's challenging to run a business. It can feel challenging to find that right person. And yet the minute you give up hope is the minute you give up possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is something which is a good conversation for us to have, Carrie, because, knowing the difference between the universe is working against you because you're not in the right place or you're just
Mm.
having to go through something. That's a very, very
Ooh.
fine line, isn't it?
Yes, I love that. It is a very fine line.
And that's why we need to slow down because it is so gray. Because I know that something I'm working on in my business right now, I started, and I know you've been here as well, I started envisioning it. And then all of a sudden it was like, all of a sudden I get an email the next day that supports it.
Yeah.
And then an invitation for something that supported it. And I went, okay, those are the
This is
signs.
it.
I am
Yeah.
literally in flow because the universe and the community is supporting me in this. So it tells me that the business needed this other avenue, right? To really, really, really succeed in the way we want to. And in relationship, it's kind of the same thing. If you're experiencing difficulties in your dating life, are you swimming upstream? Are you not fighting the good fight? You
Mm.
could say dating is difficult, but you could actually be making it difficult because maybe you haven't quite figured out your own personal brand, what your own deal breakers are, your ask, right? Like what you want to receive, how you want to receive. Do you even know how you're being perceived in the world? There's a lot of like self-education that people are missing out on in order to know the difference of, am I just like banging on the wrong door?
Right.
Do I just give up? Like that's where people struggle because the people that I see struggling in dating, it's not because they haven't met the right person. Every single time, Carrie, they are doing something to put a roadblock in front of them
Yeah.
every single time. And it's usually because they're not looking for the right thing. And so the universe isn't providing it.
Right. Can't give you something that, you're not bringing in,
Right. And I say,
Yeah.
matchmaking, everybody thinks matchmakers are so, almighty and powerful. To me, I'm not the matchmaker. The match is already made. I'm just a facilitator listening to divine timing and going, oh, you two. And every single time I've had a couple that got married through me, it wasn't me throwing spaghetti at the wall. I already knew when I made the intro. I was like,
Right.
oh, you could feel it like, ooh, those two. Yeah, like they need to meet. I didn't
How
know
fun would that be? How fun for you to be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to put these two together.
It feels like somebody is pulling on your skirt. It feels like a tug, much like
Yeah.
intuition, right?
Yeah.
It's not screaming at you. It's just
Right.
like this,
Yeah.
this feels really, really, really right. And so if I don't feel that, I don't create it. I don't introduce those people unless there's some kind of thing there, because that's when people get upset. When they go into, I've got a turbo date, I've got to go head first. They're not doing enough breathing and meditating on it first to go, is this the right person? Like, am I the right person? And am I the person this person is looking for? Because that's the magic of matchmaking. It's
Yeah.
not just directional out, what are you looking for? It's who's looking for me. I'm not right for everybody, right? But
April?
who needs me?
Most people. I was just gonna say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm like, you need to get that book out there. The questions that you're putting out there and the thought processes that not only are gonna help someone really find love, but to understand, like you said, is the timing right? And that's just not in love, it's in life. Sometimes you want something so badly and you get hurt, or work is taking you away from something right now, or whatever it is. And I know you and I both believe in flow, and
Mm-hmm.
that there's always this divine timing, and sometimes we have to look at ourselves first with a pretty big mirror and say, what am I putting out there? How can I take responsibility for this, instead of blaming the apps and blaming everything else as to why you're not finding love, or creating that business, or whatever it is. So insightful. We got to get that book out there, April.
I know. I'm working on it.
Up next. So let's talk about, as we wrap up this interview, I always ask, what does inspired living mean to you?
Oh, I love that question. Well, it's what we've been talking about. To me, if I'm living an inspired life, it's because I am accessing my core values in my friendships, my business, and in my family, in my marital life.
Mm-hmm.
If I have time for laughter, fun, believe it or not, is my number one core value. I didn't know that. I thought family was my number one value. And I did like this whole huge test on it, and fun came up twice. And I said to my friends, like, that's not fair. I'm a businesswoman. And they're like, no, that's pretty accurate. But I realized it is. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. But if you're not supported by family and friends that say, that's actually how you're going to succeed, fun doesn't mean you're slacking. Fun means like you are literally lit up, right?
Yeah.
So if the creation of my company, like even the beginning days of my building my company, they were really, really fun, right? If I'm not, if I'm living with intention, and I'm having an impact in some way, that is another value of mine. I need significance.
Mm-hmm.
I need significance everywhere I go. I need to feel like I'm actually doing something, and I want to lead a creative life. So if it's fun and it's creative and there's significance, that to me is inspired living.
Mm-hmm. That is why we are soul sisters, my friend, and why I love
Yay.
hanging out with you and can't wait to do it again. April, thank you so much for your time and your insight and your courage.
You always get me to say things that I would never say to anybody else. You're like Barbara Walters.
I love that. I'll take that as a huge compliment. And I love you so much. I appreciate your friendship and just, all that you do for other people too. It's just really amazing. And I can't wait to see where you continue to take level and how you continue to bring love into people's lives. And again, I know we already talked about it, but if someone wants to get to know you or wants to follow you, or where do they go to get more April Beyer?
Well, definitely levelconnections.com. And I am always on Instagram. So follow me there on Instagram, April__Beyer, and come say hello, DM me, and love to connect with everybody there. And thank you, Carrie. I adore you. And I loved watching you commit and say your I do's and see your beautiful, beautiful family that you've come from and that you've created. It was such an honor to be there.
Thank you so much. Talk about timing, right? It
Oh,
just really is
yes.
divine. And I think when we learn to trust it, we can all just breathe a little bit easier. So, with that, I love you, April. Cannot wait to see you again soon. Thank you so much for your time. And if you loved this episode, I'm just going to ask you right now to subscribe to Inspired Living and make sure to share this with someone, whether it's love or building a business. There are so many things that April shared that can really benefit and, if I dare say, inspire someone else. So take a moment and share this, because I truly believe that when you are inspired, you inspire others. And we need a lot more of that. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. You've just heard another uplifting episode of Inspired Living with Carrie Murphy, the podcast. I hope you loved it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you'd like to know more about Inspired Living or to get your hands on many of our awesome free resources, such as the Be Studio Ready Guide, simply visit us at inspiredliving.tv/podcast. Remember, your vision is your destiny, and we're here to help you bring it to life. Join me again next week for another extraordinary episode.